Welcome to The Art of the Matter, a place where we talk about and understand great works of art. I'm your host, Nichola, and in this podcast episode, we're going to be talking about The Drowning Muse, the story behind Millais' Ophelia. Close your eyes for a minute and picture this. You're standing at the edge of a slow-moving river. The water is dark, almost black, but incredibly clear. You can see right down to the silt and pebbles on the bottom, glimmering in a soft, diffused light. The air is heavy, damp, and green. Now look into the water. Floating there, amidst the carpet of flowers, is a young woman. Her rich embroidered gown is saturated with water, billowing around her like a silken cloud, its weight pulling her down. Her skin is pale, almost luminous against the dark water. Her head is tilted back, and her face is serene, her lips slightly parted, not in a scream, but in a faint, haunting sigh. Her hands are upturned, floating at the sides in a gesture of surrender. She is Ophelia, in the last moments of her life. And this is the scene Sir John Everett Millais burned onto the world's retina. We are wading into the waters of his masterpiece, simply titled Ophelia. It's a painting of breathtaking, almost painful beauty, but to create this vision of poetic tragedy, Millais embarked on his own journey of obsession, hardship, and a revolution in how art was made. To understand this painting, we must first step into the fractured world of Shakespeare's Hamlet. The play is a vortex in betrayal, madness, and revenge. At its centre is Prince Hamlet, feigning madness after his father's murder, and caught in the storm of this plot is Ophelia. Ophelia is Polonius's daughter and Laertes' sister. She is also Hamlet's lover, but she is a pawn in the political games of the Danish court. Her father and brother police her chastity, warning against Hamlet's advances. Hamlet himself, in his feigning madness, brutally rejects and torments her. His famous line, "Get thee to a nunnery," crushing her spirit. The final blow comes when Hamlet, in a fit of passion, accidentally kills her father, Polonius, who's hiding behind a tapestry. It's this act of violence that shatters Ophelia's mind and spirit. Unmoored from her family and rejected by her lover, Hamlet, she descends into a profound and poetic madness. She appears before the court handing out flowers, each one a symbol of her grief, singing cryptic, sorrowful songs about lost love and death. It's in this state that she meets her end, and this is the crucial part. Millais does not paint her madness or even her suicide, he paints the aftermath, as described by Queen Gertrude, in a speech that is one of the most beautiful and devastating obituaries in all of literature. There, on the pendant boughs, her coronet weeds, an envious silver broke, when down her weedy trophies, and herself fell in the weeping brook. Her clothes spread wide, and, mermaid-like, awhile they bore up, which time she chanted snatchets of old tunes, till that her garments, heavy with their drink, pulls the poor wretch from her melodious lay to muddy death. This speech is all we get, a second-hand report, a lyrical, filtered memory of a death that happens off stage. For a Victorian audience, this was the point of maximum poignancy. Ophelia was the ultimate tragic yet romantic figure, the innocent, beautiful young woman driven mad by a cruel world and dying a passive, beautiful, and haunting death. Shakespeare was a favourite source for Victorian painters precisely for scenes like this, ones rich in emotion and symbolism. But Millais didn't just illustrate Gertrude's speech, he made it feel terrifyingly real. He took that poetic, off-stage moment and gave it a tangible, botanical, and psychological weight that the stage never could. And so we see Ophelia floating, her hands upturned in a final, saintly gesture, her gaze vacant, her mouth slightly open as if mid-song. The rich silver-embroidered dress billows around her, pulling her under. It's a moment of serene, yet eerie and heartbreaking death. But to create this illusion of effortless beauty, Millais embarked on a process that was anything but effortless. And to understand this extreme commitment, we need to first understand the artist and his mission. Sir John Everett Millais was a prodigy. He was the youngest ever student admitted to Royal Academy schools at the mere age of 11, but by his early 20s he had become a founding member of a rebellious secret society, the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. This group, which included Dante Gabriel Rossetti and William Holman Hunt, was in full revolt. They rejected the old, master-approved rules of the Royal Academy, which they felt produced stale, formulaic, and brown-tinted paintings. Instead, they looked to art before the Renaissance, Master Raphael, hence the Pre-Raphaelite name. They championed a new ideal, staggering realism, vibrant colour, and serious subjects from literature and modern life. Their motto was truth to nature, and they meant it literally. This is why, in the summer of 1851, Millais didn't just make sketches by the Hogsmill River in Surrey. He set up his easel and committed to painting the entire background outdoors, on the spot. He was determined to capture the scene with fidelity never seen before. And so he began what is called his martyrdom. For 5 months he sat by the river, day in and day out, painting every leaf, every flower, every glint of light on the water directly from life. In a letter to a friend he complained of being probed by the muscular flies of Surrey, threatened with trespassing for destroying a farmer's hay, and being in constant danger of being blown by the wind into the water and becoming intimate with the feelings of Ophelia. He even joked that painting under such circumstances would be a greater punishment to a murderer than hanging. Yet, from this ordeal emerged a landscape of miraculous detail. The plants were depicted with such painstaking botanical accuracy that a professor, unable to take his class to the country, supposedly took them to see Ophelia, as it was instructive as nature itself. For the Pre-Raphaelites, detail was never just detail. Every element was a symbol. For example, the flowers in Ophelia's watery grave are a floral eulogy. The poppies signify death, the forget-me-nots floating in the water are a plea for remembrance, and the violets around her neck stand for faithfulness and an untimely death. It's a scene of both breathtaking beauty and profound sorrow, built one truthful symbolic brushstroke at a time. But while the landscape was a labour of love and principle, the figure of Ophelia would become a trial of endurance. While Millais had his river scene, he needed a model to be Ophelia, and for this he chose a 19-year-old model named Elizabeth Siddall, discovered while working in a hat shop. But Siddall was far more than a muse for the Pre-Raphaelites. Her own story is a poignant reflection of the limited roles available to creative women in Victorian England. While she was modelling, Siddall was also a poet and a painter herself, taught by the group's founder, Dante Gabriel Rossetti. However, the Victorian art world drew a stark line between the male artist as the visionary genius and the female model or student as the passive source of inspiration or the genteel hobbyist. The Victorians saw the male artist suffering for his craft as romantic, while a woman's was often a mark of her fragility. This context makes the creation of Ophelia all the more layered. Now, how do you paint a woman drowning in a river in the middle of a London winter? You get creative. Millais had Elizabeth pose in a bathtub full of water in his studio. To keep her from freezing, he placed oil lamps underneath the tub. But the story goes that on one occasion, the lamps went out. Millais, so engrossed in capturing the folds of her dress and the pallor of her skin, didn't notice. Elizabeth, ever the dedicated model, and perhaps as a woman in that position, feeling she had no right to interrupt the great artist's process, didn't complain. However, she later became severely ill, with her father sending Millais a doctor's bill for £50. The artist paid, and she recovered, but the story cemented the painting's legend as a work born from suffering. In a way, Siddall's real-life ordeal in the bathtub parallels Ophelia's fictional one. Both were young women whose physical and emotional distress became a spectacle, framed and aestheticized by male narrative. When you look at Ophelia, the first thing that strikes you is the detail. But why did Millais go to such extreme lengths? Part of the answer lies in the new invention of the time, photography. In 1851, photography was just 12 years old. It was hazy and it was imperfect. Millais and the pre-Raphaelites were making a bold statement. A painter could record reality with more detail, more clarity, and more symbolic meaning than any camera ever could. The painting then is a triumph of the human hand over the mechanical eye. But it's more than just a technical feat. The composition has been carefully worked to pull you in. As you look at the painting, your eye follows the line of the river. From the lush, dark bank on the left, across the water, to the stunned, open space on the right, a visual echo of Ophelia's extinguished life. The vertical of her dress is countered by the horizontal flow of the water, trapping her in a frame, much as the societal expectations of the time trapped women like Elizabeth Siddal, limiting their ability to be creators in their own right. And then there is the colour. The brilliant, almost unnatural green of the foliage frames Ophelia's pale, luminous skin and the stunning silver and gold of her dress. A dress, by the way, that Millais bought from a second-hand shop for £4, an antique even then. It's a final, poignant detail. The model, the woman, adorned in a costume from the past, forever frozen in a role conceived by a man. This fusion of art and life didn't end with the painting's completion. In fact, the public's interpretation of the work became deeply intertwined with the tragic biography of Elizabeth Siddal herself. As her life unfolded, her tumultuous, on-again, off-again relationship with Rossetti, his struggles with depression, and her eventual death from laudanum overdose just 2 years after the marriage, underpins the Victorian public narrative that saw her not just as the model for Ophelia, but as Ophelia herself. This is because both were perceived as victims of love. Ophelia driven mad by Hamlet's rejection, and Siddal, in the public's imagination, worn down by Rossetti's infidelities and neglect. As such, the painting became a premonition, and Siddal's own death was often romanticised as a real-life performance of the Shakespearean role she had embodied. This interpretation, however, completely overshadowed her own agency and her work as an artist. She was internally cast as the beautiful, doomed victim, a figure defined by her suffering for love, much like a character floating in the stream. The painting of Ophelia is thus not just a masterpiece of pre-Raphaelite art, it is also the frame through which we were long forced to view the tragic, abbreviated life of Elizabeth Siddal. Ophelia was a sensation when it was exhibited in 1852. The same year, another version of her death, by artist Arthur Hughes, was also exhibited. Some critics were startled by its originality, while others were captivated. It was bought by an art dealer for 300 guineas, beginning a journey through various collectors before being acquired by Sir Henry Tate, who presented it to the nation. It is now a cornerstone of the Tate Britain's collection. But as we've already seen, its legacy goes beyond the canvas. The image of Elizabeth Siddal as the tragic, beautiful, drowning Ophelia has become iconic, foreshadowing her own troubled life and early death. It has inspired countless other artists, from J.W. Waterhouse to filmmakers and photographers. So when you are standing in front of Ophelia, you're not just looking at a scene from a play. You're witnessing a radical artistic manifesto painted leaf by leaf amidst trespassing warnings. You're seeing the ghost of a shivering woman in a bathtub clad in a second-hand wedding dress. You're seeing a moment where art itself was trying to prove it could be truer than life and more beautiful than death. What do you see when you look at Ophelia? Tragic beauty or something darker? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for joining me. I'm Nichola, and this has been The Art of the Matter. Until next time, keep looking, keep creating, and remember, every masterpiece begins with a single, thoughtful brushstroke.